Today we're going to talk about some features I would like to see be added to the Sigma FP through future firmware updates. But first, if you're new to the channel, my name is Anson, and on this channel we talk about filmmaking, specifically budget gear, tutorials, and a look at the projects that I'm working on. So if that's something you're into, consider subscribing. Recently in a Facebook group for the Sigma FP, there was a poll that was taken asking what we would like to see from the Sigma FP, and I thought that might be a fun topic to put into a video, and so that's what we're going to talk about here today. Before we pull this train into fantasy speculation station, I should probably say that none of this is coming from actual Sigma. This is all just my own personal speculation. I do work with Sigma quite a bit, and so if I've made anyone at Sigma mad, much apologies. Okay, so let's start off this, we'll call it fantasy firmware update, with an option I would like to see, and that is LUT support. This would be such a game changer if we're allowed to load custom LUTs on the Sigma FP. Honestly, it's one reason why I don't pick up the Sigma FP for some of my jobs, simply because I want quick turnaround time and I'm going for a certain look, and so it's a lot easier to load those LUTs onto the S1H and basically see my overall look that I'm going for with being able to load custom LUTs on the S1H, and that's something I would love to see from the Sigma FP if we're talking about a fantasy firmware update. Okay, I just realized I have 18 minutes left on this card, so we're going to keep this going. The next thing I would like to see from a fantasy firmware update for the Sigma FP is continuous charging while recording or while the camera is in use. This is actually something that I think could be pretty realistic, seeing that the FPL has continuous charging while in use. I really wish they would do a firmware update on the Sigma FP to allow for that same option. I don't know why it's not been done so far, and I said before it may be a hardware limitation, but I would like to see continuous charging if the hardware does support it in a future firmware update for the Sigma FP. Okay, so the next few ones are kind of out there. I don't know if we'll ever see them with the Sigma FP, but the next one for me is an open gate option with the FP. If you're unfamiliar with open gate recording, basically open gate allows you to use the entire full frame sensor rather than cropping into 16:9. It does give you the full sensor size, and that's something I would like to see from the Sigma FP to take in more light, as well as being able to do things like maybe anamorphic shooting, which is the next thing that I would like to see from a firmware update, is a built-in anamorphic mode. Now I will say there is a hack for recording anamorphic with the Sigma FP. Now there is some limitations with that, like being able to use focus assist features or things of that nature, but this will give you the ability to de-squeeze in camera if you do want to use anamorphic lenses with the Sigma FP. Now talking about open gate and anamorphic modes, one thing I really wish would come to the FP is the ability to shoot 4K DCI internally. Now you can shoot 4K DCI to the Blackmagic Video Assist, but I really wish there was an option to do it internally. Basically what I would like to see from a firmware update are things that you can do externally with the Sigma FP, but put into the camera. Now going back and actually talking about externally recording with the Sigma FP, some things that I would like to see supported with a firmware update is the ability to do things like custom frame guides when you're doing external recording. I don't know if the Atomos Ninja 5 allows for this, but when I hook up the Blackmagic Video Assist, I can't use the custom frame guide option from the Sigma FP, which is personally one of my favorite features. And so having the ability to have custom frame guides pushed out to external recorder would be a really nice feature that may be more niche and something that really only applies to me, but that would be something that's really nice to have. And that brings me to the last thing I would like to see from a fantasy firmware update if we're talking about in the fantasy world where the FP is just perfect software wise. One thing I would like to see is if you're recording externally, giving you the ability to shoot 4K 60. I don't necessarily need 4K 60 internally, but it would be really nice to have if you're shooting to the Blackmagic Video Assist or the Atomos Ninja 5, is being able to shoot 4K 60 externally. Even if there's a crop, I would just really like to have that option. And so that's something I really wish came with a firmware update, is the ability to shoot high frame rates in 4K. I don't need 6K, I just need a good 4K 60. And so again, those are some things I would like to see from a fantasy firmware update. Now that being said, as I said before, let me know in the comments below what you would like to see from maybe a fantasy firmware update. Again, no log. If you say log, I'm blocking you. Instant block, no log. And so that's it for me. I hope this was helpful or maybe entertaining, or maybe you didn't even know the Sigma FP didn't have these things. And so hopefully gave you some information on some of the things that the Sigma FP may not be able to do at this time, but hopefully maybe one day it will, maybe even with a Mark II Sigma FP. So with that being said, if you did enjoy the video, make sure to give it a like. And if you're digging the overall content from the channel, consider subscribing. As always, thank you for joining. Go and find your journey, go embrace life, stay safe, be happy, support each other, wash those hands, and I'll see you here next time. Peace.